I was standing at Narita Airport last week, checking in for my flight. I walked up to one of those new, gleaming self-service kiosks. The screen was bright. The interface looked fast. I tapped my passport, confirmed my seat, and in 30 seconds, it spat out my boarding pass. Perfect, I thought. This is the Japan I expected. High-tech, efficient. I grabbed my suitcase and turned towards the bag drop, feeling good about skipping the line. And then I saw it. The real line. A long, winding queue of people, all holding the same boarding passes from the same kiosks, waiting to hand their bags to a human. I got in line. 20 minutes later, I reached the front, where an incredibly polite agent took my pass, scanned it, then printed the paper luggage tag and attached it to my bag. The high-tech kiosk hadn't replaced the old process. It just added a digital step before it. She smiled, bowed, and wished me a good flight. And as I walked away, I looked back at the machine, then at the long, patient line. The whole setup felt like a perfect illusion. A modern face built to hide a system that couldn't, or wouldn't, let go of the past. It wasn't about speed, it was about something else entirely. And that strange experience at the airport, which, I'm sure many of you have encountered in different forms, isn't just about a slightly flawed system design or bad engineering.
No, not at all.
It feels like it reveals a profound, almost structural difference in how major global economies approach modernization, progress, and maybe even the source of global power.
That's it, exactly.
So today, we're diving into that paradox of modernization. Why does one powerful, advanced nation seem caught in this kind of, polite stagnation, where the technology just serves as a digital veneer masking an inflexible, old, labor-intensive process?
And at the same time,
why is another, its strategic competitor, so rapidly using system integration, decisive policy, and just unmatched scale to fundamentally reshape global innovation?
That airport anecdote, it perfectly sets up our mission for you, the listener. We really need to move past those superficial metrics, the number of kiosks, the speed of the hardware.
Right, the shiny objects.
Exactly. We have to understand the underlying economic and cultural operating systems at play.
Right.
We're going to contrast two fundamentally different models of progress. We need to get into the structural mechanisms that enable truly disruptive high-speed change. One national system prioritizes consensus, minimizing friction at all costs, even if that leads to the redundancy you experience.
Right, the extra 20 minutes in line.
And the other is driven by determined top-down integration aimed at maximizing system efficiency and ultimately global competitiveness. By understanding this deep contrast, you'll see that the competition isn't just about who makes the better product.
It's about which national system can generate scale and innovation with speed and relentless purpose.
That's the real game.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of polite stagnation. The experience I had at Narita is, it sounds like a textbook example of what the sources are calling superficial digitalization.
It is.
It's not that the engineers lack skill. The hardware, as I said, it was impeccable. So if the technology exists, why is the systemic result so much inefficiency?
What you encountered is essentially a digital overlay on an analog system. The underlying pre-existing process, which is often rooted in paper or physical tasks that require a sequence of human sign-offs, that remains rigid.
So it's not being replaced?
No. The new system doesn't eliminate steps. It typically just adds a digital record before the manual step occurs, which actually makes the entire flow longer. Let's just walk through your check-in experience again, but really meticulously to emphasize the redundancy.
Please do, because I think that's the key to understanding this inertia.
Okay, so you interact with the kiosk. The kiosk confirms your identity and flight details. That is step one, the digital input.
Simple enough.
But the kiosk cannot finalize the process. It can't, because the legacy internal system demands a human check. So you stand in line. When you reach the agent, they take your physical boarding pass, that's step two.
Which I just got from the machine.
Exactly. Then they scan it again to confirm the kiosk's input, step three. Then, because the digital system is merely an overlay, the agent must physically print the paper luggage tag step 4 and manually affix it, step 5. In a truly integrated, modernized system, steps 2 through 5 would be completely eliminated. They'd be replaced by a single automated drop point that verifies weight and scans a digital record.
Sure.
In Japan's approach, the organization's primary goal is not maximizing genuine output efficiency. It's about preserving social and procedural integrity, making sure every necessary department or individual still gets to touch the process.
So the technology is introduced, but its whole purpose is validation, not replacement. It's essentially bureaucratic paperwork, just digitized. Why would a world-leading technological society deliberately embed this kind of labor-intensive redundancy?
I mean, it really boils down to a profound cultural and organizational imperative. Blame avoidance and collective responsibility.
Blame avoidance, okay.
Think about the consequence of a fully automated system. If a system is 100% machine run and it fails, let's say a piece of baggage is lost, the accountability is crystal clear.
It's obvious who's at fault.
It falls on a single department or the machine vendor or the engineer who designed the flow. This creates a huge amount of career risk and high social friction in a culture that absolutely values harmony.
And a system designed for high friction is designed for high risk.
Exactly. But in a hybrid system, the one you experienced, where a human still verifies the machine's work and signs off on the paper tag, responsibility is fundamentally diffused.
Ah, I see.
If the bag goes missing, the error can be attributed to the machine, or the human's failure to properly affix the tag, or maybe a flaw in the interaction between the two.
So nobody is really to blame.
It protects any single individual or department from bearing the full weight of failure. It stabilizes the internal social order and makes the system predictable, but the massive, undeniable cost is genuine efficiency and dynamism. Organizational metrics become based on compliance with the process, not the efficiency of the output.
That distinction, optimizing for stability rather than speed, that is so crucial. And this structural need to diffuse responsibility brings us to a concept that seems to act as a structural veto on progress, nemawashi.
Nemawashi is often mistranslated. People think it just means politeness, but it is far more significant than that. It literally means turning the roots, like preparing a tree for transplanting by trimming the roots beforehand.
And of a business context.
In the context of business and government, it is the informal, mandatory consensus building that absolutely must occur before any formal proposal is even considered.
We're talking about a process where the real decision is made outside the formal meeting room, right? Before anyone even sits down at the table.
Precisely. High-ranking individuals expect to be privately and informally consulted before any major change that affects their domain. If they are surprised by a proposal during a formal meeting, they will often reject it purely because they feel ignored or disrespected.
So it's a failure of process.
A failure of process, regardless of the proposal's actual merit. And this process is inherently slow. It can paralyze progress because the organizational fear of friction, of offending a necessary stakeholder, is so overwhelming that highly disruptive, high-efficiency changes are simply never brought forward.
I see. So this isn't just politeness. It's a structural mechanism that provides a powerful veto to any entity within the system that might feel slighted or uncomfortable?
Yes.
And we have a perfect anecdote that illustrates the consequences of this veto power taken to the extreme. The story of the airport manager who tried to push for real automation.
This is where you see the polite stagnation locking itself in. This operations manager at a major international airport, he had the budget, he had the engineering proof for a fully automated baggage drop system.
So everything was ready to go.
It was designed to dramatically cut check-in times and reduce labor costs. However, during the trial period, a single elderly customer, someone unfamiliar with the interface, lodged a highly emotional complaint.
What'd they say?
They declared the machine cold and impersonal. This one complaint was instantly escalated.
And the response was immediate and devastating, wasn't it?
Yes. The administration was governed by what the sources term customer complaint governance. This fear of negative feedback, particularly visible negative feedback that might cause social discomfort, led them to immediately halt the entire project.
The entire project.
The entire project. They reverted to the fully staffed manual counter system. The project was reversed because one person felt uncomfortable, demonstrating that procedural integrity and individual comfort trumped massive demonstrable efficiency gains for the collective.
That's incredible.
That is the cost of optimizing for consensus and blame avoidance.
It's an equilibrium state where the dynamism of the market is just sacrificed for organizational harmony. This inability to adopt global best practices if they challenge internal comfort or structure, this is exactly what leads to the Galapagos syndrome.
That phrase is a very, very accurate metaphor. Just like the specialized animals on the Galapagos Islands, this syndrome describes the development of highly sophisticated but internally focused solutions that are poorly integrated with global standards.
They're trapped on the island.
They evolve in isolation, perfectly adapted to their unique domestic environment, but completely unable to compete or connect globally. We mentioned the coexistence of world-leading industrial robotics with the reliance on fax machines and physical Hanko seals for business transactions.
Right.
These are not contradictions, they are manifestations of the syndrome.
They perfected the internal island, but that perfection doesn't translate to the global sea. We heard from a European engineer who encountered this firsthand while trying to modernize a cargo logistics system. What was the central bottleneck she identified?
Her task was to upgrade a major port's cargo logistics, a huge job. She quickly discovered that the internal software managing the movement of containers was proprietary, highly complex, and about 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
And crucially, it was completely isolated. It could not communicate with modern global shipping APIs used by international carriers like Maersk or Costco.
So how do they update anything?
To update a container status or customs details, a port worker literally had to manually retype the data from the international carrier screen into the port's internal system.
Unbelievable. That's a massive source of human error and delay purely because of system isolation.
Of course. Her recommendation was the only logical one: a complete standard-compliant overhaul to ensure integration.
And the response.
That proposal was swiftly, though very politely, declined. The reason given was that a complete overhaul would be too disruptive to the existing internal process and workforce.
Too disruptive.
The commitment was to protecting the perfected, proprietary internal system, even though it acted as an undeniable bottleneck for global trade flow. The consequence is that Japan, despite its technological prowess, risks losing dynamism in industries where speed and global integration are essential competitive weapons. The structural constraint of the Japanese system is that it is designed to absorb the shock of change and protect the status quo.
So if the structural goal in one system is preserving the status quo and minimizing friction, let's pivot and look at a national system whose stated goal is rapid, scalable, and non-negotiable transformation. This brings us to China's approach, which is focused on seamless integration rather than digital patching.
The contrast is stark, and it's captured perfectly by Kenji, the businessman traveling from Tokyo to Shanghai, who labeled his Narita experience automation theater.
Automation theater, I love that.
The difference isn't marginal, it's philosophical about the function of technology in society.
Kenji's experience illustrates precisely how China's integrated digital transformation, prioritizing efficiency and user experience, avoids that superficial digitalization and polite stagnation we see in Japan. How does the Shanghai experience fundamentally differ from the Tokyo one?
The difference is all in the design philosophy. Narita's process was sequential, fragmented, and redundant, a digital dead end that required human intervention.
By 20-minute wait.
Exactly. In contrast, at Shanghai Pudong, Kenji experienced a single, seamless digital flow. He completed the customs form using a smartphone app before he even landed.
So the process starts before you're even on the ground.
Correct. At the E-gate, the entire process was consolidated. One single action involving a facial scan and a passport scan at the E-gate completed his entry in about 30 seconds. The system was designed from the ground up to eliminate redundancy and human intervention, prioritizing end-to-end user efficiency and flow. This is modernization by systemic replacement, not procedural patching.
That focus on comprehensive strategic integration, that must be what enabled the explosive growth in their digital payment sector. They didn't just iterate on the Western model. It sounds like they skipped an entire generation of technology.
Absolutely. While the West focused on incremental improvements to bank intermediated card systems, moving from magnetic stripes to chips.
Sure, a slow evolution.
China executed a total leapfrog. They bypassed the entire card-based infrastructure and jumped straight to digital wallets, Alipay and WeChat Pay, using QR codes. The rapid adoption rate, with over 1 billion users on each platform in under a decade, is just unprecedented.
This shift is so significant because it fundamentally changes the strategic locus of financial transactions. It's disintermediating traditional banks.
Correct. The payment ecosystem is taken out of the control of traditional banking and financial institutions and placed squarely in the hands of big tech and social networking firms.
And that's strategically crucial.
It is, for two reasons. First, these tech firms generate massive amounts of real-time transaction data that banks never had access to. Second, this data allows for alternative underwriting, providing credit, loans, or other financial services based on social and spending habits, not just a formal banking history.
So it opens up the whole system.
The efficiency and convenience of this system have made it ubiquitous. It's replaced cash, cards, and even traditional forms of social interaction. You see beggars displaying QR codes for donations.
Wow.
That level of penetration and scale is an incredibly powerful engine for further digital innovation.
So we have one system, Japan, paralyzed by the need for consensus and blame avoidance demawashi, and another, China, achieving these disruptive shifts through speed and scale. This difference must be rooted in their decision-making mechanism.
It has to be.
If Japan is paralyzed by one elderly customer complaint, how does China manage these massive disruptive shifts without internal friction stopping them? This must bring us to their decisive, top-down approach to modernization.
This is where we investigate how China's decisive, top-down approach to large-scale smart infrastructure projects like airports enables rapid modernization and avoids the paralysis of nemawashi and customer complaint governance experienced in Japan.
So it's a completely different logic.
Unlike the bottom-up process requiring universal consensus, China employs a determined, centrally coordinated approach for projects deemed critical to national strategy.
But doesn't that decisive top-down strategy carry massive risks? I mean, doesn't centralized planning often lead to huge misallocations of resources or the risk of building expensive white elephant projects that aren't responsive to real market needs?
That's a valid, critical point, and it's often raised when analyzing state-directed development.
Sure.
However, the source material focuses on the proven efficiency of implementation when the strategy is non-negotiable and aimed at a clear strategic objective. When a project like Beijing Daxing Airport is initiated, the directive is unambiguous. Build the world's most efficient, largest, smart airport.
No room for debate there.
That high-level mandate completely bypasses the local or departmental paralysis we observed in Japan. The system optimizes for the successful execution of the strategic directive, not the comfort of individual stakeholders.
So instead of being paralyzed by individual complaints, the system has a capacity for mobilization that ensures national strategy is executed, even if it causes local friction.
Exactly. And the high-level policy mechanism ensures that these core national strategies are financed and executed. We see this with the issuance of these ultra-long special treasury bonds, 1 trillion yuan in 2024, 1.3 trillion in 2025.
That's a staggering amount of money.
It's not standard budget financing. This is massive, sustained investment aimed squarely at executing major national strategies. S&T self-reliance, major infrastructure upgrades for urban-rural integration, and energy security.
It's wartime-level investment almost.
This strategy is designed to tackle urgent, systemic bottlenecks that local governments or conventional commercial means simply cannot overcome. It provides the implementation capacity and speed necessary to manage international uncertainty.
It reflects that principle of concentrating resources to accomplish major undertakings, a powerful tool for rapidly moving an entire economy. And this strategic prioritization of integration is also reflected in their approach to global standards, which seems to contrast sharply with the Galapagos syndrome.
Correct. While the Japanese system often retreats into its own proprietary perfection, China's system prioritizes global technological integration and continuous innovation, which prevents that Galapagos syndrome from ever taking hold.
So they're always looking outward.
Take the logistics sector again. The focus is on implementing dynamic, interconnected, smart logistics systems that interact seamlessly with global platforms. Their rapid adoption of global standards, not internal proprietary ones, ensures that their infrastructure scales efficiently for international trade and data flow. This integration is crucial because it facilitates the final component of their systemic advantage, leveraging scale to drive innovation.
And here is where we absolutely must confront the conventional wisdom head-on. For decades, the narrative in the West has been that China is a copycat economy, suffering from weak IP enforcement and a rote education system that stifles true breakthrough creativity.
Right, the old narrative.
But the data and the analysis presented today suggest that narrative is profoundly outdated and, frankly, structurally incorrect.
It's time to move past the ideologically driven dismissal that China can't innovate. The facts demonstrate that China's firms possess considerable degrees of freedom to pursue the non-negotiable goal of becoming the world innovation leader.
Structurally, how should we think about it?
Structurally, China is not just a major economy. It is described in the analysis as being akin to the Asian tigers 20 years ago, thanks South Korea or Taiwan, but operating at a colossal, unprecedented scale. They are not merely a tiger. They are, and I'm quoting here, a fire-breathing dragon on government-provided steroids.
That is a powerful image. And it really necessitates redefining what we mean by innovation, doesn't it? We often romanticize the lone inventor having a breakthrough, but the analysis focuses on something far more systemic.
Innovation is defined here not just as rare, disruptive invention, but as successfully bringing new products or services to market at scale.
At scale, that's the key.
The vast majority of innovation is sustaining continuous, incremental improvement in product, process, and cost. China has followed a time-tested path, but executed it with unmatched speed. First, absorb foreign technology through FDI, joint ventures, or forced transfer. Then, diffuse that technology throughout the domestic market, and finally, dedicate indigenous effort to assimilate, adapt, and improve it until they become independent global innovators.
And their most potent competitive weapon isn't necessarily a brand new invention, but the combination of that scale and a huge cost advantage.
This is the existential threat that must be recognized. If China achieves innovation parity-producing complex, new-to-the-world products while simultaneously maintaining a significant cost advantage.
What are the numbers on that?
Chinese labor costs are approximately 25 to 30% of U.S. costs.
A quarter? Wow.
And that combination creates a market dynamic that foreign competitors simply cannot sustain. This is especially true in industries like chips, aerospace, or biotech, which are characterized by massive upfront fixed costs, R&D, tooling, but low marginal costs. In these fields, scale is everything.
So if a subsidized Chinese firm undercuts the global market price, forcing competitors to reduce their sales and their margins, what happens to those foreign firms?
They enter a competitive death spiral. A loss of market share leads to reduced revenue, which means less money for R&D reinvestment.
Which means they fall behind technologically.
Exactly, which leads to further market share loss. Meanwhile, the Chinese firm, backed by protected domestic revenues and subsidies, gains market share, reinvests aggressively due to massive scale, and accelerates down the industry learning curve, making the gap impossible for foreign competitors to close.
That structural threat is massive. Let's break down the mechanics behind this. The analysis defines China's strategic framework using the 10 S's. Let's start with the base layer. Science and engineering talent.
The output of talent is strategic. Unlike the United States, which tends to prioritize producing PhD-level researchers focused on fundamental discovery, China focuses on producing a massive volume of bachelor's and master's degree STEM talent.
So not just the top-level researchers.
No, this workforce is explicitly geared toward continuous, incremental improvement within companies, the core of that sustaining innovation we just talked about. The sheer quantity, the analysis argues, has its own quality.
And the cost difference we mentioned, that must act as a force multiplier here.
Precisely. Due to the lower cost of highly skilled technical talent in China, for every dollar a U.S. firm spends on R&D staff, a Chinese firm can effectively throw 2.3 R&D workers at the same problem.
2.3.
Just think about the cumulative advantage of having more than double the engineering man-hours dedicated to iterative process improvements over a 5-year period. It ensures they close capability gaps far faster than anyone anticipates.
Okay, next we move to head start and market size. How does being big translate into an insurmountable global advantage?
China's industrial policies have been highly effective in securing a head start in strategic sectors like drones, nuclear power, and critically, electric vehicles.
They picked their winners early.
By using policy and investment to propel domestic companies far down the industry learning curves early on, they achieve a decisive economies of scale advantage that is very difficult to claw back. Furthermore, the massive Chinese domestic market is enormous and, in key industries, often protected or strategically managed.
So they have a safe home base.
This guarantees immense secured revenues for Chinese firms, which acts as a stable, massive internal bank account, fueling aggressive R&D reinvestment.
This combination of market protection and massive revenue allows them to achieve incredible speed, which is the next key S. How are Chinese EV makers 30% faster in development cycles than their international competitors?
The speed advantage is rooted in their production system focus. Innovation isn't restricted to isolated R&D labs. It's centered where the product is actually built.
Close to the factory floor.
Chinese EV firms achieve faster release cycles up to 30% quicker than American, European, and Japanese car makers through several structural advantages. They utilize aggressive prototyping, constantly bring improvements to market to capture market share, and critically, there is far less bureaucratic sign-off required for changes. The entire system is built for rapid feedback and iteration, moving from design to product release in months, not years.
And that speed is inextricably linked to the next point, local suppliers.
That's right. A major factor enabling that speed is the preservation of rich, deep production agglomerations. Because China maintains a robust, low-cost production system, most suppliers, from complex components to raw materials processing, are still co-located in China.
So they're not waiting for a part from halfway across the world.
Often they're geographically close to the original equipment manufacturer, the OEM. This close proximity accelerates feedback loops, enables just-in-time delivery of prototypes, and speeds up collaborative problem-solving. This avoids the systemic delays and knowledge erosion, or hollowing out, seen in Western firms that have distributed their supply chains globally.
Finally, let's address subsidies and protections. While these often draw criticism in free market analyses, here they are presented as a strategic competitive weapon.
The analysis makes it very clear. Chinese industrial policy spending is estimated to be several times higher than that of large EU and OECD countries, and the financial penetration is nearly universal. A staggering 99% of listed Chinese firms receive direct government subsidies.
99%.
This financial backing is not a sign of failure. It is a feature designed to create a competitive advantage. This subsidy acts as a weapon, allowing firms to cut prices aggressively, rapidly gain scale and market share, and then use the subsequent scale-derived revenues to reinvest in R&D and boost quality.
So the goal isn't just to keep the firms alive, it's to actively displace foreign competitors.
Exactly. Take the example of the EV maker BYD, which has received over $3.7 billion in subsidies.
$3.7 billion.
That capital enables them to compete globally on price, driving down the margin for foreign rivals, while ensuring they maintain sufficient R&D funding to continue leading in areas like battery technology. This strategy structurally strengthens Chinese firms while actively eroding the capacity of foreign competitors to earn market-based rates of return in those key sectors.
So it's a virtuous cycle for them and a vicious one for everyone else.
This is the circular model of innovation in action. Scale generates revenue. Revenue is reinvested in speed and talent. Speed ensures market dominance, and dominance guarantees future scale. And if the 10 S's are the engine, the empirical data provides the evidence that this engine is generating overwhelming output and momentum, defying that outdated copycat narrative. We can quantify this strategic power shift in science, talent, and industry.
Let's start with the fundamental inputs. Researchers and R&D spending. The sheer volume of investment is just staggering.
It is. By 2021, China employed 2.4 million researchers. That's a full 50% more than the United States.
50% more.
And look at where the money is going. In 2022, China's business sector R&D expenditure, meaning the money spent by companies, not just government labs, was virtually equal to that of the U.S., coming in at $641 billion versus $646 billion. The spending is massive, and it is strategically concentrated where it matters most for commercial innovation in the hands of the corporations themselves.
And this translates directly into scientific output, moving from just volume to genuine quality.
The volume shift happened quickly. China surpassed the U.S. in the publication of scientific and technical articles back in 2016, and by 2022, they were leader by 47%.
That's a huge lead.
But the crucial metric that challenges the old critique is quality. China has moved to world-class levels in both the volume and the quality of top-tier academic publications. They are rapidly moving from assimilation to challenging nations with centuries of scientific leadership. This concentration of expertise is further evidenced by the innovation ecosystems. As of 2023, China had 23 scientific and technology clusters in the global top 100.
And how does that compare?
That's 2 more than the United States' 21.
23 clusters versus 21. That difference is strategically meaningful, right? It's not just a number.
Absolutely. Those clusters represent concentrated centers of talent, suppliers, capital, and universities. The fact that China has more of these key agglomerations highlights their resilience and speed advantage across diverse supply chains, ensuring that innovation benefits from proximity, just as we discussed earlier.
Now let's look at specific commercially competitive industries and see where the strategic framework has put them. Are they ahead or at par with the world?
Let's look at key strategic industries. First, nuclear power. China is decisively ahead. They have more nuclear power plants under construction than the rest of the world combined. They're utilizing designs they have adapted and refined from foreign technology to achieve greater efficiency and speed of construction.
Okay, second, electric vehicles and batteries, a market that has been completely reshaped by Chinese firms.
Here, China is solidly at par with global leaders and is rapidly gaining overall dominance. They account for 62% of global EV production.
62%.
And the real innovation story here lies with companies like CATL and their work on lithium iron phosphate, or LFP, battery.
LFP, right. That was considered old tech.
LFP chemistry was once considered obsolete for passenger vehicles because it had lower energy density and performed poorly in the cold. However, Chinese firms didn't invent a new chemistry. They mastered process innovation. CATL developed advanced structural systems like cell-to-pack technology, integrating the battery cells directly into the vehicle structure.
And that changed everything.
It dramatically increased energy density and viability, making LFP the low-cost, high-scale winner. LFP now accounts for 40% of the global EV market. That's a huge win for process-based innovation.
And what about the automation economy, robotics, and AI?
In robotics, China is near the lead. Their strategy is highly aggressive. They installed more industrial robots than the rest of the world combined in 2023.
More than the whole world combined.
They compete on cost. Their robots might deliver 80% quality compared to the best Japanese or European models, but they are dramatically cheaper. This lower price point drives scale, which then fuels the aggressive reinvestment required to close that remaining 20% quality gap.
In AI, they appear to be operating right at the innovation frontier.
That's right. China and the U.S. are neck and neck in generative AI research output, particularly in top-tier publications. And in application, China is rapidly advancing its open-source large language models, things like Qwen 1.5, showing a major push in developing foundational technologies that will underpin future digital integration.
For perspective, however, we have to note the areas where they are still actively catching up. Where are the current technological bottlenecks for them?
The most challenging area remains semiconductors. In cutting-edge logic chips, the most advanced processing units, their flagship fabricator, Saxmic, is estimated to be about 5 years behind global leaders like TSMC.
5 years is still a big gap.
It is. And crucially, they significantly lag in the sophisticated manufacturing equipment, particularly lithography tools, where they are estimated to be 5 generations behind. That equipment is the choke point.
But the catch-up strategy isn't static, is it? They're not just waiting.
Far from it. While they lag at the bleeding edge, Chinese firms are rapidly gaining ground in mature or legacy node chips, which still power most industrial equipment and consumer electronics. The country's determination is clear. China will add more chip-making capacity than the rest of the world combined in 2024.
So they're cornering the market they can control.
They are maximizing output where they can, while strategically pursuing breakthroughs, such as Huawei's notable 7nm Kirin 9000S chip that was released in 2023.
And finally, biopharmaceuticals.
In biopharmaceuticals, China is lagging overall but making really impressive progress, particularly in basic scientific publications. The key indicator of quality is the surge in out-licensing deals.
What does that mean exactly?
That's where major multinational corporations pay large sums to acquire Chinese biotech products for further development. It signals growing international confidence in their quality. These deals doubled between 2019 and 2023, particularly in oncology research. The gap remains, but the velocity of closure is undeniable. So let's revisit the profound philosophical difference we started with, exposed by your experience at Narita versus the seamless flow of Pudong. The Japanese system prioritizes stability, social harmony, and procedural integrity above all else, which in the face of global technological competition results in polite stagnation.
Right.
China's system, however, operates on a fundamentally different principle, what we call national power capitalism.
That phrase, national power capitalism, is truly startling. It implies a strategic worldview that is fundamentally different from the linear free market model many in the West assume all successful economies follow. What exactly does this worldview entail?
National power capitalism is premised on the belief that economics, trade, and technology are not just domains of commerce. They constitute an existential battlefield where there are winners and losers.
A battlefield.
China's objective is not optimized market exchange or short-term consumer welfare. It is to maximize global techno-economic power and self-sufficiency. Investment, policy, and exports are all explicitly used as tools to strengthen its own firms, secure critical supply chains, and strategically weaken foreign competitors.
So if Western nations historically view trade as a win-win system built on comparative advantage, China views it as a fundamentally zero-sum competition for market share and technological leadership.
That's the critical divergence. The Western innovation model is often a linear model. Fundamental discovery, heroic entrepreneurial invention, followed by market forces hopefully leading to successful commercialization and production.
A sort of straight line.
China's approach, the circular model we've described, focuses relentlessly on production capability across the entire value chain. It's a supply-side, bottom-up approach that maximizes scale, uses policy and cost to gain global market dominance, and then relentlessly reinvests the resultant massive revenue back into R&D and talent. This creates a self-reinforcing innovation loop.
The ultimate implication, then, is that this entire global competition is about which system, the one focused on preserving the status quo or the one driven by power and speed, can best seize the global innovation frontier.
Exactly. If China successfully moves to that global innovation frontier, a destination toward which all forces in the country, from policy to investment, are strategically directed, the center of global economic power and innovation will fundamentally transform.
It's a huge shift.
This shift is much larger than a mere change in trade volume. It represents a deep systemic transformation driven by competing systems and worldviews, where one prioritizes power and scale above all else, and the other still struggles to shed its focus on short-term market allocation efficiency and avoiding internal friction.